Hi everyone, Lisa here, and welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, I want to chat to you about something that's very alive in me today, since it's something that I have been helping some of my clients with, and it's a topic that I teach on in the Menstrual Coach Academy, and I also support my clients with the clients who I supervise as well, the graduates of the Menstrual Coach Academy. So I also help people in their coaching practice and if they are struggling with client cases and building their business, etc. And this topic is when we ourselves or one of your own clients has an overbearing friend, family member, or partner that is getting overly involved in their healing journey. Okay, so an overbearing friend, family member, or partner who's getting very heavily involved in their healing journey. And there is a technical word for this. It's called triangulation. And it's something that I've seen a lot in my own coaching practice when I have clients come to me, particularly younger clients. So clients who might be in their early 20s, so they're still adults. And maybe one of their parents can be very involved in their healing journey. And it's a little bit more than helpful. It's almost like an overbearing, controlling energy. And yeah, it can be a big problem in the coaching space. It can really interfere with the work. It can interfere with their journey. So that's something that I want to chat with you today about. It's not something that I've seen talked about very much in the coaching space and in the menstrual cycle coaching space. The reason why this is so important to know what it is, to know how to recognize it, and then to know how to work with it is because there's so much uncertainty in the menstrual cycle coaching space. There's a lot of unmet needs in the space. There's a lot of women and young girls who are not getting the right support in the medical system. So, of course, this can then leave family members feeling really worried and frightened. And then the fear can really take over. And then that can then turn into control. And the control can then impact the individual's healing journey. So it's really important that we have a conversation about this and know how to work with it. So triangulation is a dynamic that can happen for yourself. It can happen for yourself. You might have experienced it. And you can also experience it if you are a facilitator or a coach. And it's a dynamic where instead of there being the facilitator, the coach, or the therapist, and then the client or the student in that like equal relationship, there can also then be a third party involved that is interfering in the dynamic. So that's called triangulation. And yeah, it's just something that we have to be aware of. So, how does it show up? It can show up as the way I see it in my work is a mother maybe sending an email on behalf of their adult child, or it can be a partner. So, it's usually a parent or a partner who is taking the reins, taking the lead with what they think that their friend or their partner or their child should be doing with their health. And so in my case, my experience of it has been parents contacting me and arranging appointments and sending me all the information for their child. And then with some of the coaches who I supervise, it has come through in their partner, very often the male spouse, arranging the appointments, wanting to sit in on the appointments, and wanting to have a say in their nutrition plan or their wellness plan or the medicine or the supplements they take, and just getting very, very much involved. And yeah, even just saying that, this might be new to some of you, but it's quite common. It's quite a common thing that can happen. And this is one of the reasons why it is so important if you are a helping professional that you're getting supervision and that you can help yourself through these complex relationships and complex dynamics that can show up in the coaching space. So that's really how it shows up. And it can be quite deceiving because, if you are not used to seeing this and not used to recognizing it, that individual, so the parent or the spouse, will usually present themselves as being helpful, as being the person who's making the decisions, as really wanting to help their kid or their partner. And while that is probably true on the conscious level, on the unconscious level, there can be then this feeling of disempowerment within the person who's actually going through the difficult things. So the client in this case, okay? And usually, if this triangulation is happening and it's presenting in the coaching or in the therapy space, for me, that's usually an indicator that this probably happened before with other professionals, with other coaches. It's probably happened in other areas of their life and it didn't start with you. Okay. So that's a really important thing to remember if you are a coach or a facilitator. And then you see this dynamic happening that it's not your fault. It's just a dynamic that's coming into your space. And that's why it's so important to recognize it and to be wary of it. And this is the part where we have to come into what I teach in the Menstrual Coach Academy is our nervous system tracking. Okay. So when we are practicing our own embodiment and in our really grounded in ourselves and in our own nervous system tracking, our intuition will be very sharp when we're working with our clients. And we will be able to sense the difference between a genuine, helpful, concerned spouse or parent versus someone who is concerned, but then there's this control thing happening underneath the surface. Okay. So we just want to be aware of that. For me as a coach, I usually default to alarm bells when there's a kind of a triangulation happening, and I won't usually immediately say it, but it is something that I will be sitting with, curious about. I'll be asking myself, okay, what's happening here? How do I navigate this? What step do I need to take? What conversation do I need to have with my supervisor? I'd be very curious about what's happening and not assume anything. So there'd be a lot of curiosity happening for me. So those are the different ways that it can show up. And then for yourself, if you recognize this for yourself, and a lot of us too can relate to this can also show up as like the same examples, like a partner or a friend or a parent overly involved in the care. And this can be coming from a place of fear. It can be coming from a place of impatience. It could be coming from a place of themselves being impacted by this medical issue or difficulty. And then in some cases as well, it can be coming from a place of that usually the parent is overly identified still with the parenting role, even when their child is in their adulthood and they haven't yet fully separated from them as an adult. And they're maybe again, all unconscious on an unconscious level, still clinging on to wanting to be the care provider for their child and how they haven't yet processed their own letting go or grief or all the emotions that come up with children growing up and how relationships change when children grow up between parents and kids. So that also can happen is that the parent can there's just a lot of unprocessed stuff there and they are having an unconscious need to still be the carer and that can then impact the child again on an unconscious loyalty, keeping the child in that quote unquote victim place, keeping them in that stuck sick place. And when they stay in that stuck sick needing place, that allows the parent to have their unconscious needs met to be in that care providing role, particularly for the parent who really identifies with being a carer, being a provider, being helpful, being the person that the child and other children go to. And again, I say all of this with a lot of compassion because this stuff is very complex and we're talking about relationships and unconscious loyalties and family dynamics and family systems and emotions and all of this, lots of stuff that we talk about in the Menstrual Coach Academy. And again, for the purpose of this video, this is just to shine a light on this topic because it's such an important topic. But that is how it can show up. And it's something to be curious about for ourselves as well. That role that other people have on an unconscious level in our own chronic pain and how we break out of that. So the negative impact of triangulation or these unnecessary loyalties that happen is that when a parent, for example, or a spouse is in that overly involved place for their own needs, um, again, on that unconscious level, it can really keep their partner or their child, i.e., your client or yourself, really stuck in that victim place and detached from their own agency and decision making. Okay. So, what I see in my work is that there's a huge excitement and a huge attraction and a huge desire to have all the right steps and read all the books and know all the information and know all the science in order to heal one's chronic pain or menstrual cycle challenges or whatever it is to do with hormones. Okay. And it is exciting, and there's so much hope out there because there are a lot of books and information and podcasts and doctors and nutritionists and all these people out there who can really help. And there's loads and loads and loads of information nowadays, and there's more and more research happening, which is amazing. But the problem then is that when that triangulation is happening and that other individual wants to know the thing that their kid or their partner needs to do, it doesn't give permission for the client to just be in their agency and in their own decision making. So I'll tell you an example. I had a few years ago, I had a parent reach out to me on behalf of their daughter about menstrual cycle coaching because she really wanted her daughter to get menstrual cycle coaching because her daughter was going through a lot of difficulties with her cycle, etc. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think I at the time agreed to meet the daughter. I did say I need to meet because I asked her the age of the daughter, and because she was over 18, I asked to meet her daughter in a consultation call by herself. And then as a coach, my role is to assess whether the coaching is appropriate for the client or not, okay, regardless of what's going on. And one of the most important things is consent in my work. So if a client, if the information and the stuff, the tools that I teach, so hormone stuff and menstrual cycle awareness and tracking and nervous system regulation and diet and lifestyle and all these like things that you can learn from me, if they are not what this client wanted, then it's not a good fit, okay, regardless of what the mother thinks. And then long story short, it turned out that this was a family who, like most families and myself, they were really wanting to prioritize natural holistic interventions as opposed to anything medical or even psychotherapeutic. And when I had a chat with the client in the consult call, she told me that she actually wanted to go to therapy and that it was her mum that wanted her to do menstrual cycle coaching because it was more quote unquote holistic. Okay. So that was then a red flag for me that this triangulation was happening and that the mother, and again, unbeknownst to her and compassion for everybody involved here, but it was just an indicator that the client, even though she was an adult, a young adult, was feeling disempowered and was feeling the pressure from her mother to work with me. And that is quite problematic because even a very well-meaning mother, because they are the mother, they hold a power and influence over their daughter or their kid. And it's very, very important to me that this client was able to access her own opinion, her own decision making, her own agency, regardless of what that decision was. Okay. Because for me, from the perspective that I work with, which is in the Menstrual Coach Academy, you'll learn so much more about this, is that the the way we relate to this work is more important than the information itself. Okay. So you can know all the science in the world, but you can use it against yourself, or you can know all the tools in the world, but it can be used against you. And when that client is able to access their own decision making, their own critical thinking, their own agency, be in their sovereignty, then they have much more chance to access the healing that they're looking for. Okay. All the information in the world is not going to work at all if somebody is not in their own agency, sovereignty, and decision making. even the right to make decisions that are not right for them, or even the right to make decisions and then for those decisions to not work, even the right to make mistakes. We have to give people the space to figure this stuff out for themselves. And as a coach and facilitator, that is the like most important thing in my work. And I will not take somebody's money if some kind of triangulation is happening because it's going to create a big mess for me. It's going to be emotionally very complicated for me and relationally very messy. I will then have to have extra supervision and then I will have to clean up a relationship with with all the parties in the triangulation. Okay, so it's something that I look out for. It's something that I teach on in the Menstrual Coach Academy, and then I have supported my own supervisees through cleaning up these messes. And again, I know that was an example with the mom. I also had a supervisee this year who had a client, and the client's partner, I think husband, insisted on being involved in their care. And again, it wasn't really from a place of care, it was on an unconscious level from a place of control. So that's very difficult to work with when you are a coach or a facilitator and this is happening in your dynamic and you've never been taught it and you don't have a supervisor and you don't know how to clean this up and you don't know how to navigate through these difficult situations. It's a really, really big, important topic that we understand how to work with and clean up in a way that is boundaried and compassionate, but also firm. Okay. And so when I think about that client I had the consult call with a few years ago, even though I didn't do a piece of work with her, in a way, I did do a piece of work with her because I didn't work with her for months and months, but I had, I think, a very empowering conversation with her. And I hope I supported her in accessing her agency and her decision making because I think she did email me a few months later to say, I'm in therapy now and thank you for that, and she found a therapist that she liked. So that's the kind of coach I want to be. And the kind of impact I want to have is no matter how long I work with someone, even if it's just for 20 minutes, that I can just steer the ship in the right direction so that she goes off in more alignment with who she is and what she needs, regardless of the outcome with me. So so that's a very important thing to think about when it comes to these the who the client works with and what's happening and how long you work with them and then when this triangulation can show up. So the negative impact of this triangulation is that when there is that third party involved, well, it can really mess up the coaching. It can you can start to get controlled yourself as a coach or facilitator by that particular person. You can start to then go into managing their feelings and expectations and managing relationships with two people, and it's very messy and it doesn't create for a healthy, impactful piece of work. It's really not something you want to get into. And then, like I said, the control then obviously will continue this position of disempowerment for the client. Okay. So in the Menstrual Coach Academy, we teach something called the drama triangle and then the empowerment triangle. And those are tools that you will learn how to support your clients to come into empowerment and to step out of feeling disempowered all the time. And that can be a big piece of work because people who are stuck in these relationships in their own personal lives where they feel there's a bit of an oppressor or someone who's very interfering or overbearing or controlling, but they still love that person because they're married to them or it's their parent or a friend. That can be that can be challenging to work with. And so it can take a while for that person to see that, and it can take a while for that person to break out of it in a safe way without imploding their whole world and all the relationships around them. Okay. So this is complex stuff and it does have an impact because it can keep people in the disempowerment. And when people are stuck in disempowerment in their health journey, then they're very likely to stay stuck in where they are, regardless of what health program they sign up for. Okay. So that's the negative impact of it. And how to recognize this for yourself. I think this is quite a charged topic. And, even just talking about it makes me feel uncomfortable, but I really want to talk about it. But yeah, you can recognize this for yourself, I think, by just being curious about like if you are someone who is on a health recovery journey, particularly with a chronic illness, some questions to ask yourself could be, and I want you to go into this with a lot of just very compassionate, gentle curiosity and go really easy with yourself. So if you're doing some processing, so that could be in a journal, or you could just be thinking about this in the shower, or you could be chatting about it, or you could come on one of my courses and study with me, or you can go on a walk and think about this stuff. But one of the questions you could have for yourself is, and I know this sounds like a very strange question to ask, but I want you to be really open to it. But the question is, who might be benefiting from me staying sick? Who might be benefiting from me staying sick? And when you ask yourself that question, I want you to allow yourself to think about benefiting in an unconscious way. And what I mean by that is that you and the other person, they don't consciously know. It's like an unconscious thing in their unconscious. Okay, so who or what? And then don't go searching for the answer. Allow the answer to come to you, or allow some clues to come to you, or maybe you'll have a dream, or maybe you'll have a feeling. I know for me, when I was exploring this for myself, there was a time where whenever I was having a conversation with a particular family member of mine about my health, I felt irritated. And even though this person was just asking me, oh, how is your endometriosis? Or how, how's your pain? Every time they asked that question, I felt really, really irritated. And then after a while from doing this work and doing the work I do, I practiced my tool of curiosity and mindfulness, and I stayed present, and I realized, like, God, isn't that interesting that every time this person asks me that question, I get really irritated. And I sat with that question, and I sat with the curiosity, and I sat with it. I probably journaled about it and went on a lot of walks and thought about it, and just kind of like hung out with the feelings and hung out with the curiosity and hung out with that question. And slowly but surely the clarity started to come through. And then I got evidence, and then I was able to see the dynamic that I was in that was very hard to see. And usually these things are on an unconscious level because they're very uncomfortable to see. And they're usually in the what's called in the shadow of our system, or in the shadow of the family system, because when they're brought to the light, they can actually threaten our relationships and then the family, and it can cause some disruptance. So yeah, we want to go really gently with this stuff with ourselves. But that would be how to recognize it for yourself, is just very gently asking those questions, holding a lot of compassion and curiosity, not to go into blame. And then there might probably will be some grief, to go through, or some shock, or some irritation, or anger, or resentment, or feel like mostly probably anger and grief. These emotions that we need to process in order to move through into accepting the situation and then changing the situation, which is another piece of work we work on. So that's how to recognize it for yourself, how to recognize it in others, particularly if you're if you are a coach or a facilitator or a therapist, is, like you'll see it if it's a parent who's contacting you on behalf of somebody and that somebody is over 18, or if there's a partner involved, like a usually a boyfriend or a fiance or husband who is getting kind of overly involved, not from a caring, curious place. And you'll know yourself, you will be able to tell the difference as a professional if someone is reaching out because they found you first and they're genuinely interested and they want to help, or if they are controlling. You'll just know, you'll know yourself, you'll know the feeling, and then you'll be able to figure that out, and you can get help with this. And I supervise people, so I can help you with that too. So how to recognize it is usually if there's like a third party involved. For me, I default anytime there's a third party involved, I just default to a red flag or at least an amber flag. I just default to that because it's so common, and my priority is the safety and the well-being of my client, and the well-being of my relationship with the client, so I can do my job well. It's like number one priority for me. So I will just default to a red flag if there's a third party involved. Okay. How to help somebody out of it. So for this question, let's talk about if you are the coach or the facilitator, is how to help somebody out of this. Like I did before, it is, having firm boundaries in your coaching practice, having a policy where you don't have a third party involved unless it's for an accessibility need and it's consented and there's a discussion with the client privately about the reason for that. I have very strong boundaries around that. I will not coach somebody with someone else in the room. It's just a non-negotiable policy in my business. But then if the client is, really wanting it, I still don't still don't allow it. I probably would have to get supervision on a case by case basis, but just having a strong policy around it and processing feelings with the client if there are feelings coming up for that. And then at the same time, remaining in your professionalism, just communicating your policy and the reasons for that. You don't have to go into all of this stuff about triangulation, but just saying that it interferes with the work and um, you're not able to coach when someone else is there. You're not able to do your best work when someone else is there. And then, yeah, when you see it in coaching and what to do, it like I said before, I would encourage you to default to a red flag if you recognize it, and then slow down the process with signing up with a client, have a consult call, assess the situation, assess the triangulation, ask yourself what's the best, port of call here. If this is something new to you, I do recommend you get supervision around this because it can be difficult. It can trigger our people pleasing stuff and wanting to do things correctly. But it's very strong. It's very important that we, as coaches and facilitators, hold really strong and firm boundaries to create a safe space for our clients. Okay. So, with how to get out of it for yourself or how to help somebody else out of it, it is through having loving but firm boundaries, still remaining open hearted, having conversations, but being very, very clear in yourself with what's okay and what's not okay and what you need in order to do your work well. So if this is something that you yourself are going through and you're kind of unraveling yourself from this, lots of love and compassion. I've been there too. A lot of people I know have been there through too. It's a very common thing that happens that again no one talks about. And you don't have to end relationships over this. Go gently with yourself, recognize it, give yourself a pat on the back for doing this inner work and for doing such courageous work where you're looking at the truth and the uncomfortable truth of something that's happening or maybe has been happening for a long time. Lots of self-care. And then over time, take your time with making decisions, with interacting with the person who you feel like might be stuck in that relationship with saying yes to things, saying no to things. Give yourself time to reflect and slow down the communications, slow down the interactions, slow down your own decision making process, get some support. Join me in the Menstrual Coach Academy or in the Menstrual Mastery Collective. I'm here to help you with this as well. And that's it. That's what I want to say on what to do when we have or our client has an overbearing person in their journey and if there is some triangulation going on. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it shone a light on something that you might have felt but have never been able to express before. It is a very common thing. And it's something that can really, really impact you, your own healing journey, or your client's healing journey. And it's very important that we support ourselves and we support our clients to unravel from this harmful dynamic because it can really get in the way and interfere with your or someone else's healing journey. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can leave a comment below or get in touch, and I will see you soon. Thanks for joining me on the Menstrual Cycle Mastery podcast. If you'd like to begin this work with me, I run the Menstrual Mastery Collective, a monthly membership where you can dive deep into this work live alongside me and a supportive community. I'm also the founder of the Menstrual Coach Academy, a professional training space for trauma-informed coaching and facilitation. Head on over to the links in the bio to sign up for courses, programs, and grab any resources available. I'm so glad you're here.